Hello everyone. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the lovely comments on the little video that I put up. So I thought I'd do another one, obviously a different format because I'm at home. So I hope you enjoy it because I've still got some really lovely, wonderful nuggets of information to share with you. So I thought I'd start with this one again from the first video because Bernard, one of my colleagues, he found out what the MPBW stood for. So I'll let you know on the next slide. So the Ministry of Public Buildings and Works. After all this time, we finally know what it means. So I'm going to start off with quite a poignant story. It's one that's on the website anyway, the Duxford website. It makes for quite a harrowing read, so I'm not going to give you all the details on it because you can read up on it more if you like. But I thought I'd put this lovely picture on of the air traffic control tower in the snow, and the bench there in front there, that's dedicated to a chap called John Stacey. And there's only a few of my colleagues now, and ex-colleagues, who'd remember John, but he was a really lovely chap. And I always remember he said if he could have his life all over again, he would have loved to have spent his whole career at Duxford. That's how much he loved it. But back to the original story. So the 78th Fighter Group, they'd done a mission that morning. And if we now go to the afternoon of that day, there was a visiting pilot. He was a B-17 pilot and he was in Ready Freddy. And he came to the base about 2 o'clock and he wanted to take some people up for a flight. So he did, and then unfortunately, not sure how he lost control or what happened, but the aircraft hit a neon beacon, which was on Hangar 3, and then that caused him for the wing to drop off the aircraft. I've read a few reports where one says it landed on the roof, one says it landed in front of the Officers' Club, as it was known then, and then sadly it careered into one of the H blocks on the north side. There were 14 people killed in that accident, but had it have been an hour later, that H block would have been full of personnel. So, as you can imagine, morale took a nosedive then, and I think it was maybe a week later that they had a service for those people in the chapel. So this is a picture of our chapel now at Duxford. It's very rarely opened, maybe on air shows perhaps, or Christmas time. But the chapel in 1944 was actually on the north side, and it was in the building that the Astra Cinema is in now. So this is our lovely officers' mess. I'm not sure. Here comes the cat. She's always trying to get in on that cat when I start filming. She's like me, and you loves to be the centre of attention. So yeah, this is our lovely officers' mess now, and I'm not sure if any of you know, it's obviously closed at the moment, but there's a lovely little cafe in there, which is open to anyone. It's called the Officers' Mess Business Centre now, and so yeah, anyone can go. Obviously don't rock up with like a coach party on spec, 'cause it is quite small. But yeah, it's really beautiful now in that sort of central area because they've restored it all. They've kept relatively faithful to the interior. They've saved all the original sort of period features, which was really lovely. So yeah, if you ever fancy a cuppa when everything is open, then yeah, just try looking at the little Officers' Mess Cafe, but look online first to see when it opens. So I just thought I'd throw in a few random things now. This little bit is right at the western end, and I just love nature, and I love how that's just grown right through that fence, and it's still there to this very day. A few more random facts. The chap on the left there on the flight simulator, he's one of my chums. His name is Andy, and he used to work at Duxford with us as a museum assistant. And on the right there, it's in the old telephone box, and there's a beautiful little poster in there. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. It's between Hangar 3 and 4, but it says, "Send your overseas greetings by the new year, Deluxe Telegraph Service." Isn't that lovely? So I'm sure you've all seen this little piece of railway, and it was there for two purposes. Well, the first one originally was, I'm pretty sure it had something to do with the Burma Railway. Forgive me if I've got that wrong, but there was actually like a little locomotive on there, and they'd take people for rides right towards the end of the airfield, you know, for about 50p or whatever it was back then. And the little sort of offshoot that's going towards Land Warfare Hall, that was because we've got a simplex rail tractor in there, so that was a way of sort of getting that in there and then sort of keeping the railway tracks. Eventually, though, we did have to pull up the bits between the fence and Land Warfare because they were a trip hazard. So we're now in Hangar 3, and as you walk through from the front, this is on the right hand side. So where you see that grey brick wall with those white bits, that was originally a pathway there, and so it had all these lovely sort of big images of all the different insignias for all the different bomb groups and fighter groups. And I think they all left there when we maybe built the American Air Museum, I can't remember. But were you to still walk down there, I'll show you what comes next. So it would have led you to the Poddington Big Picture. If you are at Duxford and you really want to see this, obviously we're all a really lovely, friendly bunch. So if you see one of us when we eventually open, and I don't know when that's going to be, yeah, just find a member of staff and we'll take you across the ropes there and you can have a good look at it. So I've done a few close-ups on some of the little shields that are on it, on the other side of it to the left and the right. So here we see Big Picture, and that was painted by Staff Sergeant Waldschmidt. Waldschmidt, I hope I've said that right, Staff Sergeant. Apologies if I haven't. So this is one of the little plaques that's on the side, and it says The Big Picture, removed by members of the 8th Wall Art Conservation Society in October 1989. Wow, God, I just left art school in 1889, 1989. Yeah, that was in my former life. So on this little shield, it says Big Picture, transported from Poddington to Duxford, courtesy of the 18th Transportation Squadron. And that was RAF Alconbury, United States Air Force in Europe. Quite interesting. If ever you've been parked on the north side for an air show or something, you may have noticed some of these little pins poking out of this building. And I wasn't quite sure originally what they were, but obviously they tell a story. So I spoke to some of my colleagues, and I guess it was Bernard again, because he is the fount of all knowledge, is Bernard. What he doesn't know ain't worth knowing. And yeah, he reckons that they were for putting on camouflage netting. So I believe Bernard, because not all the buildings on the north side are painted in camouflage, or they weren't camouflage like the hangars. So at least with these buildings, they could throw over the old camouflage netting. So again, if you've been parked on north side for any reason, air shows or whatever, if you're queuing at those kiosks to come over the bridge, if you look to the right, these two little buildings here, the one on the left is a squash court and the one on the right is quite an important little building. As you know, we had the Czech squadron at Duxford, 310 squadron, so some of the pilots there were trained in that very little building. And there's also a connection with Michael Benteen. Where I got this nugget of information, I don't know, but it's just been stored in the recesses of my noodle for many years. Again, I had a little chat with it about Bernard, and yeah, maybe Bernard perhaps knows where that comes from. But so Michael Benteen, World War II, his dad was something to do with Sopwith, and he was a pilot, so he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and become a pilot in World War II. So he was queuing up to get inoculated against typhoid, and a really awful thing happened. Instead of giving him the inoculation, they loaded a pure culture of the typhoid. Now, the guy who was in front of Michael Benteen, he dropped down dead. Michael Benteen then went into a coma for 6 weeks, and then when he came out of it, it had affected his eyesight, so he couldn't be a pilot anymore. But he went into intelligence, and I think it was one of his superiors said something like about the Czechs. well, you're a foreigner, because his dad was from Peru, so he was Peruvian. Well, you're a foreigner, you'll be able to understand them so you can train them. And so, yeah, that's what he did. He trained them in that very little building. And so this is what those pilots would have been trained in. It's called the Link Trainer. Again, it's a cracking little exhibit, really lucky to have it. So that would teach pilots to navigate just using their instruments. So when they went in there, obviously it was dark, and then their sort of moves or information was plotted on the little table next to them. So again, what a cracking little exhibit that is. So this is now as you're looking to Hangar 4 on the left there, and this little tree here, this has been planted in memory of the Czech squadron, and there's a chap who comes and tends it sort of twice a year. So yeah, if you're ever passing by, then just have a little read of the plaque on there, but I've got it coming up on the next slide. So what that says on there is this tree is dedicated in memory of those members of 310 Czech Squadron who lost their lives while based at RAF Duxford in 1940 to 1941. So imagine if you're still in front of that little tree, if you were to turn left and just walk towards the T-junction there, you'll see our flagpole, so it's in between these two lovely big memorial stones, and there's another lovely little plaque here, and it says commemorating the Old Ducks Association of Veterans 1995 to 2018, who personify RAF Duxford's unique spirit and sense of place. God, isn't that marvellous? They are a really lovely bunch of people, the Old Ducks. They're now called the RAF Duxford Veterans. And I was very lucky because I've met a fair few of them, been out for dinner with a few of them over the years, which was lovely. But one particular chap called Stan Dell, he gave some really lovely talks to us when I was working with the volunteers. So he spoke about his experience at Duxford when he was based there. That would be a really lovely thing, actually, if we could bring that to you somehow. I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best. I'll mention that I've put him on here, and who knows, maybe if Stan's not up for doing anything digitally, perhaps that might be something to look forward to when we open. But yeah, I can't promise anything, but we'll see. So this is a wonderful nugget of information. I wonder if you've seen these and wondered what they are. So again, when I said before, when the American Air Museum was built and they had that large crane, there were 3 of these sort of all around the building. And what they did was they screwed a camera on top, and so they took photos every day or every week, and then they did like a time-lapse video, which was pretty cool. Whenever I see the American Air Museum from this angle, it always reminds me of that brilliant film, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and Gort. God, wouldn't it be lovely if Gort came out of the American Air Museum? But there was a really marvellous phrase that was said in that film. But that's on the next slide. Klatu barada niktu. God, can you imagine if we just all said that all at once and it stopped all the crazy coronavirus? Hey. So that's the end of another little slideshow. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free if you want to share it anywhere. Just hope that it's cheered you up a little bit, and hope you're all staying safe. And can't wait to see you all again at Duxford when we open. I don't know when that will be, so just check the website. So stay safe, everyone.